1998 and 2008, a time where it was relatively easier to escape North Korea than it is today. For example, in 2011, 2,706 people escaped North Korea, but in 2012, 1,502 escaped, a 44% decrease in just 1 year. This is largely in part to the fact that Kim Jong-un took over as North Korea's leader in 2012, following the death of his father, Kim Jong-il. Kim Jong-un intensified surveillance and control measures to prevent North Koreans escaping the country, as these defections were seen as a threat to his regime's stability. He wanted to project an image of strength and maintain a tighter control over his population. The next major decrease in defections came in 2020 when the COVID pandemic hit. The North Korean regime completely sealed off its border with China and Russia, the two main escape routes for most North Korean defectors. Border crossings over the Tumen and Yalu rivers became nearly impossible due to the increased number of North Korean patrols along this border. New barriers, fences, and surveillance systems were also added along the border. North Koreans also needed travel permits to travel from one province of North Korea to the other. This made it much more difficult for people living in North Korea to make it to other border towns and provinces, as virtually all North Koreans were trapped within their hometowns. These factors all combined together led to a record low number of North Koreans successfully escaping the country, with only 229 successful North Korean defections in 2020. This was a dramatic 80% drop from its previous year in 2019, where 1,047 North Koreans were able to escape the country. But you may be wondering why more North Koreans don't try and escape through the southern part of the country. In China and Russia, if they catch North Koreans in their country, they immediately send them back to North Korea, while in South Korea, under their constitution, you're automatically granted South Korean citizenship. Escaping directly to South Korea has been seen as virtually impossible, where an estimated less than 1% of North Koreans able to escape the country do so through the southern border. Separating North Korea and South Korea is a demilitarized zone that stretches roughly 250 kilometers long and about 4 kilometers wide. The demilitarized zone, or often referred to as the DMZ, is one of the most heavily militarized borders in the world and serves as a buffer zone to reduce the risk of any conflict between the two countries. This zone is mostly undeveloped, consisting of forests, rivers, and hills. Inside the DMZ, there's also many minefields, making it extremely dangerous for someone to walk through. Despite this danger, a select few North Koreans have attempted to escape the country by going directly through the DMZ. In August of 2024, a North Korean soldier whose name wants to remain hidden decided he needed to escape the country. For the purpose of this video, we'll refer to this man as Lee. But before I explain how Lee was able to escape North Korea, I need to tell you about the sponsor of today's video, Delete Me. I've recently been learning about what comes with online brokers selling my personal information across the web. I wanted to try and prevent this, so I tried out Delete Me, which is a hands-free subscription service that will remove your personal information that's being sold online. Data brokers are massive corporations that collect huge amounts of our personal information, like our social security number, birthdays, and even home addresses. With Delete Me, all you have to do is submit your personal profile with info you want them to remove, and then their privacy experts scan the internet to find data brokers with your information. After 7 days, Delete Me will send you a privacy report that breaks down info like how many data brokers had access to your personal info, as well as all the listings Delete Me removed, and other key information regarding people's private information actually private. I personally like Delete Me because we'll keep sending me these privacy reports regularly, so I get to know that this service is actively working to protect my digital privacy. If you want to try out Delete Me today, you can get 20% off a Delete Me consumer plan by scanning this QR code or visiting joindeleteme.com/uncovering. That's joindeleteme.com/uncovering. You can also click on the link below in the description. Get started securing your digital privacy today by scanning this QR code, and thank you again Delete Me for sponsoring this video. Lee was a mid-level officer in the North Korean military who had a relatively privileged life, at least compared to many North Koreans. Lee was also one of the guards stationed along the DMZ, which meant the military saw him as one of their most trusted soldiers. On a foggy night in August of 2024, Lee took advantage of this limited visibility to attempt his escape. Some of Lee's military partners, also stationed along the DMZ, appear to not be standing guard very attentively, given it was late at night. Given the unique circumstances, Lee left his post and set off into a 2-kilometer-wide section of the DMZ, armed with just a basic survival kit. Given the dense vegetation and the thorny bushes of the DMZ, Lee had to crawl most of the way. Lee also felt he had a good understanding of where the minefields were located, so he chose a path that would hopefully avoid setting off any of these landmines. Shortly after entering the DMZ, a few North Korean guards noticed Lee was gone and then thought they spotted him crawling through the dense bushes of the DMZ. Given how dark it was and late at night, the North Korean guards didn't have a clear sight on Lee, however. Nonetheless, the guards started firing in Lee's direction, shooting approximately a dozen rounds. Thankfully, none of these bullets struck Lee, and he continued crawling faster through the DMZ, knowing that his fellow guards were now onto him. Lee continued crawling for roughly 18 hours until he finally reached the South Korean side of the border. South Korean soldiers had been monitoring Lee's movements and quickly picked up Lee once he had made it onto their land. Lee was physically exhausted, dehydrated, and very wounded from the sharp vegetation he was crawling through. Despite all this, Lee successfully made it into South Korea through the DMZ in 2024, one of the very few North Koreans to ever do it. While escaping to the south is extremely rare, one way more North Koreans have been escaping the country in recent years is by sea. To the east of North Korea is the East Sea, or also known as the Sea of Japan, and to the west is the Yellow Sea. North Koreans don't often attempt to escape by sea, as North Korea has many patrol posts along its maritime borders, and the currents can be very strong and cold, but even in 2024, there have been success stories of North Koreans escaping by sea. A North Korean man, whose name is also anonymous, escaped the country along the western maritime border. This is the Han River and separates North and South Korea to the west. This anonymous man, who we'll refer to as Choi, made it through the military gates and fences that cut off North Koreans from being able to access the sea. Satellite imagery even shows the many different North Korean military bases along the coasts of the country. These military bases are especially common along the Han River, given it's not very far from South Korea. Nonetheless, Choi was able to remain undetected by these North Korean military guards and set out in his small wooden boat to cross the Han estuary. To make it across this estuary and onto South Korean land, you only need to travel about 5 kilometers or 3 miles, but the currents here are very strong, making navigation on the estuary difficult without a proper engine. Choi was in a wooden canoe he built, which is pictured here. Choi chose a relatively calm day and made it across to South Korea's Gyeongdong Island fast enough to not be caught by the North Korean military. South Korean military forces apprehended Choi and brought him safely into the country, another successful defection in 2024. Although Choi made it across successfully, another North Korean man who was attempting to cross at the same time as Choi unfortunately went missing. South Korean officials are still investigating this disappearance, trying to figure out what happened to this second North Korean man, but it's likely that the North Korean military was able to capture him before he made it onto Gyeongdong Island. While these successful escape attempts in 2024 are all very isolated incidents, what seems like it will be the best method for 2025. With Kim Jong-un increasing his military's presence along the entire border every year, North Koreans are going to have to come up with new ways to escape this oppressive regime. Well, in 2025, one of the easiest ways to escape may be signing up to join the North Korean military. Just as of October 2024, it's been reported that North Korean troops are being sent into Russia to help Russia in their war against Ukraine. These North Korean soldiers have been shipped over to Russia in naval ships and dropped off at the Russian port city of Vladivostok. From here, the North Koreans were shipped to different Russian military bases, where they were equipped with Russian military uniforms and were seen training with Russian troops. Vladimir Putin and Russia are buying these North Korean soldiers at a very cheap rate and are sending them into Russia's Kursk region. In the summer of 2024, Ukrainian counterattacks were very successful, so successful that they made significant gains in Russia's Kursk region. Despite Russian attempts at pushing back Ukrainian forces, Ukraine's military has kept their ground in many parts of Kursk. The estimated number of Russian soldiers killed in this war as of late 2024 is between 100,000 to 600,000, and while this is a very broad range, even 100,000 soldiers lost is an extremely bad look on Putin amongst the Russian citizens. In fear of losing even more Russian soldiers, Putin has been shipping in North Korean soldiers to fight on